File 17, aka the Angelica Incident. Please note that the following information is strictly prohibited and to any and all workers ranking 30 or below. Attempting to view this said information without required ranking any may lead to ejection from the Nightfall Lunar Hab. Do you wish to view this file? Yes. You have selected yes. Checking authorization. Authorization verified. Accessing file. File 17A. Along enclosed within this document is derived from the audio recordings of Escape Pod 4 of the SS Angelica, approximately 2 days into its deep space voyage and estimated 6 minutes before its destruction. The purpose of the Angelica's deployment was to search for reported radio frequencies in an uncharted region of Charna Nation District, and any report of any findings back to the base camp Alpha, the nearest lunar base, before recording said findings for further analysis. Such alleged radio signals had the potential to be physically or mentally damaging to the human body, and thus the Angelica was protected with layers of padding along with its upper, middle, and lower sectors. At this time of deployment, the ship held 6 crew members, 5 of which are confirmed to be terminated, and 1 whose status is unknown. Log start. A light scratching noise is audible as the Escape Pod 4 broadcasters power up. The audio is noticeably quiet at first, but well within the limits of the human hearing, a frantic noise is heard, slowly increasing in volume as broadcasters fully activate. This is Captain McKennedy of the SS Angelica speaking. Any nearby receivers, please respond. No other radio signals are present. McKennedy can be heard grunting as he attempts to zone the broken navigational system of Escape Pod 4 into the base camp Alpha unsuccessfully. I repeat, this is Captain Kennedy of the SS Angelica speaking. Any nearby receivers, please and Kennedy was interrupted by several sharp thuds on the exterior of Escape Pod 4. After radio analysis, the source of the banging was determined unlikely to be from the Metroid or some sort of other form of space debris. Oh dear God, they're trying to get in! After a few seconds passed, McKennedy's breaths became ragged and irregular. He is clearly hyperventilating. A sharp hissing noise vibrates as the interior of the Escape Pod 4. Oh no, fuck! The fucking fuel tank! McKennedy mutters the distraught tone before leaning towards the broadcaster microphone. To any active receivers, a hostile alien parasite has assimilated 5 of my crewmates aboard the SS Angelica and is currently attempting to gain access to my escape pod. The beings have taken control over the ship, despite my best efforts. My fuel reserves have been pierced from the outside and are leaking rapidly. I myself have already managed to eliminate one of the life forms, but 4 still remain. 2 muffled, unintelligible voices can be heard from transmitting outside of the Escape Pod 4, picked up by any of the pod's comms. These aliens, they're attempting to pursue me to escape the pod. They're floating outside of the windows in spacesuits. Crew members Chuck and Edward, they're dead, but the aliens are mimicking their voices. They want me to believe it's them. The pod systems softly crackle and spark in the background. I'm calling in lunar strike on the SS Angelica's position, effective immediately, in order to prevent the assimilation process from spreading any further. As for myself, I may have enough fuel left to steer myself from the blast radius, but without any navigational systems, I have no means of returning to any nearby lunar base. I will beam on my coordinates, but out onto my broadcast as soon as I am far enough away from the Angelica so I can be rescued. Captain Kennedy, out. The broadcaster radio of Escape Pod 4 click as they shut off. Log end. This message was readied relayed to the base camp Alpha receivers in less than a minute after its intentional broadcast. Thanks to the lone scouting ship that picked up McKennedy's signal as it was patrolling the area close to the SS Angelica. Soon after the message was received and relayed to the Nightfall lunar hub, a lunar strike was fired at the SS Angelica. According to Captain McKennedy, these wishes was a precautionary measure against the potential hostile extraterrestrial invasion. The strike was 100% effective, and as the Angelica was destroyed upon impact, and 55 of its 6 potentially infected crew were killed. Warning: this subsequent part of the article is extremely classified to most all workers, commanders, and operators aboard the Nightfall Lunar Hub. If you do not possess either of these ranks, President or Vice President, you are legally required to stop viewing the article here. Any attempt to view File 17B without the correct authentication will lead to guaranteed termination and/or permanent exile from the Nightfall Lunar Hub. You have been warned. Proceed at your own risk. Do you wish to view this file? Yes. You have selected yes. Checking authorization. Authorization verified. Accessing file. File 7B. Several months after the events of File 17A, a discovery was made during the small-scale salvage mission directed at the ruins of the SS Angelica. One of the crew members of the SS Intrepid, the ships dispatched to carry out the mission, discovered relatively undamaged audio log floating alongside the disheveled corpse, likely belonging to one of the 3 dead crewmates of Angelica. After a couple low-ranking Intrepid officers listed to the recording before it could be intercepted as Nightfall commanders, it is swiftly confiscated. A severe reprimanding was given to the offending officers, and the ruins of the SS Angelica were subsequently abandoned to prevent any of her possible data breach. The autolog's transcript is detailed within the following document. Log start. Several comms systems initiate their startup sequence, eventually forming into their singular communications frequency. Comms 1 crew member, Edward. Hello, is anyone there? Comms 2 crew member, Chuck. Reading you loud and clear. Ed, Gus, Frank, do you copy? Comms 4 crew member, Gus. Positive, Chuck. Comms 3 crew member, Frank. Can confirm, Chuck. Chuck. Edward, I require you a status report. What the hell is going up down here? Gus, we passed through an errant signal an hour back. We are going to record as their protocol, but it was too strong. Overwhelmed our monitors, crashed our system. We had to restart the whole damn thing all over again, which is why the comms were down. McKennedy was fixing something down in the engineering when it happened. When we went to check up on him, Frank, we found him seized up, unconscious, spitting frothing all over the floor. Edward, come again, Frank? Are you implying the signal affected McKennedy in some way? How is that possible? Frank, well, the thing is, there is no protective padding down in the engineering. It's completely exposed area. All readings confirm it. Chuck, fucking hell. Edward, but are you absolutely sure? Frank, 100% positive. It's a present everywhere else is on the ship, even in the suits. Probably just a manufacturing error that engineering got skipped. Chuck, or Nightfall skimming out on us. That padding's almost expensive material on the ship. Wouldn't it be too out of the characters for them? Cutting corners to save a buck or two. Gus, it's not important right now. We need to tell you guys something. Edward, what about Daniel? Is he safe? Gus, I was just getting to that. When we found McKennedy, we brought him to Daniel, who was, as per usual, in the med bay. It didn't take him very long for him to come, but when he did, he started yelling about aliens and parasites all over sorts of crazy shit. We couldn't calm him down. He just went rabid, completely out of control. He took a lunge at Frank, and when Daniel tried to sedate him, Gus trails off. His voice was growing weak. Frank, he sliced his neck open. lost too much blood before we could do anything. The group was stunned into silence. Edward, God. Chuck, Daniel's dead? Frank, he bled out, Chuck. He's gone. Chuck, and neither you stopped him? Frank, we tried. All three of us together could barely hold him down. He was like a wild animal. I've never seen anything like it. Once again, the comms went silent for a few moments. Edward, where is McKennedy now? Did he get away? Gus, he jettisoned into one of the escape pods, but he has yet to accelerate away from the ship. On his way out, he smashed through all the comms, so we have no hope of sending the distress signal. We can't even contact his pod. Establishing a local link with you two is as far as we can get. Edward, so what do we do? Frank, you and Chuck are now at the lower right ring of the ship, correct? Edward, yes. We've been maintaining the suits for the last hour or so. Frank, good. Grab a couple to navigate the McKennedy's escape pod out of the east airlock. Find a way to empty the pod's fuel reserves and dock it back to the ship manually. Meanwhile, we're going to fix the comms, and when you get McKennedy back to the airlock, we could seal him right in front of there. Then we could start heading back to the base camp and Alpha. And remember, the effects of the signal should only last a few hours. I mean, the captain will have to return to his usual disposition by the time we arrive. Chuck, understood, Frank. Edward, is it required for me and Chuck to depart together? If I stayed on board, I could help with... Frank, that's a negative, Edward. Docking the pod is a two-man job. Get back to us when it's done. Gus and Frank exit the comms. Chuck and Edward remained in silence as they don on their protective suits and gained the exit of the Angelica. Within a minute, they arrived at the escape pod 4. Edward, Captain, can you hear us? Edward attempts to open a comms channel with McKennedy's pod to get some degrees of successful, but all that could be heard, however, are McKennedy's muffled, distorted shouts. Edward then thumps on the metal exterior of the pod. Chuck, stop that, damn it. You're going to freak him out even more. McKennedy can be heard shouting into the comms of the escape pod 4. Audio analysis concludes that Kennedy's speech matches the audio log of included in file 17A. Chuck, take this wrench and remove the casting for the pod's fuel tank. Edward unscrews the castings as per Chuck's instructions. It takes several tense minutes. Chuck, fuck, that's really set him off. McKennedy continues shouting in the comms of escape pod 4. Chuck, right now, we open the pod. Edward, but that will kill... Chuck, I could give less of a shit if it kills him. Those two aren't going to order me around anymore. Daniel is dead, McKennedy is a murderer, and they didn't stop him. The blood is on their hands. All of them. Chuck is audibly seething each word. Edward, Chuck, I know he was your brother, but you know that's not... Chuck, shut up, Edward. You always were a spineless little shit. I am taking this in my own hands. We will say this pod is leaked. McKennedy got sucked out, and he couldn't do anything about it. Dare tell anyone else otherwise, and I'll have your head for a frickin' stick, okay? You stay there, and don't even think of trying to stop me. For the next few minutes, Chuck can be heard attempting to force open the door to escape pod 4. Edward makes a futile attempt on talking him out of it, which Chuck seems to pay no attention to. Chuck, bastard, must have put a lock onto... A distant whooshing sound drowns out Chuck's voice as the escape pod accelerates away from Angelica at a high velocity. Chuck, son of a bitch! Edward, you can't get too far. With a little fuel, maybe if we... Both Chuck and Edward's attention seem to suddenly be diverted. Chuck, what was that? Another ship? Edward, that's a lunar strike. Chuck, you're freaking kidding me. Gus and Frank suddenly join the comms. Gus, both of you get to the escape pods now as soon as possible. A loud roaring can be heard as the crew members talk, rapidly getting louder. Chuck, can't you move that ship out of the way? Gus, there's no time. Frank, Gus, we're not going to make it. The elevator's too slow. Gus, don't freaking say that. We're going to... All four men could be heard talking over each other as the strike approaches, before the noise reaches its peak and the comms go silent on all ends. Log end. An additional note to the information included on both file 17A and 17B is highly sensitive and therefore liable to extermination throughout the mass deletion of all documents contained within the libraries of Nightfall Lunar Hab. In the event such files were able to come across the lands of such foreign enemy or unauthorized group with intent to release said files to the public. Thank you and God bless America. Let's let our shining be a cast of the paths to the goals we seek. Samuel Morgan, the founder and president of the Nightfall Lunar Hub.